What is rootstock?
Okay, rootstock is that originally when we planted our vineyards, we just took a cutting off a vine. Say a Carrigan vine or Chardonnay vine, any kind of vine, and make a cutting about 12 to 14 inches long, and just stick it in the ground, they would grow automatically. It would be an own root, what they call own root, domestic. Well, then the disease phylloxera came along, and it would attack that root stock. It would eat the roots and kill the vines. In our ranch, we had a lot of dead vines when I bought it, with the big ranch. So we started asking around on what we should plant. And my father and grandfather, who had grown grapes in Italy, said that they used an American rootstock over there. A rootstock that was resistant to phylloxera. Phylloxera, they planted right where the phylloxera was and it didn't bother it. And that was called St. George. So I started buying and making St. George cuttings and planting them. And that's what you call a rootstock. That's the wild part. Then you put a little bud on the side, whatever variety you want, and it grows up and produces grapes. Well, the university found out I was planting St. George, and 3 of the professors came over because nobody was planting grapes in the 50s and 60s. Grapes were $35, $40 a ton and didn't make sense. But I was going for varietals, so I was looking at a different market, you know. So they told me, don't put St. George in. I said, why not? They said, they're too vigorous for this soil. They're not good for this soil. You should use an AXR1, which they had for sale. So I said, well, I'm not thinking about it. But I decided to keep planting St. George. I told my grandfather what they'd said. They said they came over and told me not to plant St. George because they were too vigorous. He said, they did? I said, yeah. He said, remind me of a guy that had a racehorse. He says, a hell of a horse, but it just runs too fast. So I just kept planting St. George. And in their vineyards, where they sold the XR1, 20 years later, they had to take them all out. $1 billion worth of vineyard had to come out because they all died. They didn't know what the hell they were doing. They never planted a grapevine in their life. So you wouldn't want to, a lot of people listened to them, but I wouldn't listen to them. They didn't have any experience. Why do you want to listen to them? They'd have gotten me in a lot of trouble if I'd listened.